Hey guys, Ellie here in the garden again, and today I'm going to be doing a little bit of transplanting into certain parts of our garden using the volunteers that have come up. So I just thought I will take you along on that little journey and show you that sometimes you don't always need to buy starts. If you just look carefully, sometimes the garden actually gives back to you. So in this area of my garden, I'm actually growing carrots at the moment, but I did want to show you over here, I have a Swiss chard. And if I pull these carrots back slightly, you can see I have one or two more. So my plan is to come and transplant these three into this little gap over here. I also have two lavender plants here that I don't necessarily need growing in my vegetable garden, so I'm going to remove them from the ground and put them into pots so that hopefully we can take those down to the homestead with us and they can be planted out there. In this container I also have another lavender, so this will be the other one I take out. So in total I should be taking down to the homestead with me the next time I go down 3 lavenders. So I think I'm going to start my journey today over here by this giant pile of pots, and I'm going to try and find myself 3 containers for those lavenders. I do want my containers to be big enough to hold the lavender root system, but I'm honestly not sure how big that really is. So I'm just going to go for a gut feel here. And since I doubt they're going to be in these containers for very long, I'm just going to opt for this medium-sized container. Alright, so I'm just going to start by trying to remove this lavender without necessarily moving anything else. I do know there will be some sort of disturbance, I understand that. I would like to keep it minimal. Okay. Okay, well, I'm here to remove some of these weeds. Now, ideally, you would want to put this directly into the pot, into its soil. I'm just going to quickly go and dig out the other 2, and I'll do all 3 at the same time. So I do have this rich compost kind of soil that I'm going to use. It's got worms, it's healthy, as well as some of this potting soil that I still have in this container. And I'm just going to mix them up a bit. They probably won't stay in these containers for very long. Ew. They're like the biggest worm I've ever seen. It's huge. Ugh, gross. Yeah, happy potatoes, I guess. So while I am uppotting these, I don't actually know that these are something my mom even wants. I'm not even the greatest fan of lavender. It has its place for the pollinators, and that's what we're going for. So instead of pulling them out and having them go to waste, because I don't require them in my space, I'm actually just going to offer them to my mom. And hopefully they will make the homestead happier for the pollinators too, which is pretty cool because bees are something they're into. One down, 2 to go. Okay, so I'm a little bit sandier, but for the most part, those 3 are done. We need to give them a good watering, let them settle in, and hopefully they bounce back, because I'm not sure if lavender likes to be transplanted or not. But it's happening. I can't keep them in my vegetable garden. They get too big and they throw shade on the other plants. And because I'm limited for space, I really do want to monopolize it with the things I want to grow. So unfortunately, these 3, and fortunately, I suppose, will be rehomed. Right, so this is going to be my next task. This one I know I can remove fairly easily. Just going to lift that and move it over to the side. However, with this piece of plastic, I want to try and be careful because the lettuce has grown through the grid. So the first thing I'm going to do is just remove these labels that I've been using as stakes to hold this down. Then we're going to start with this top piece of fence or mesh. Just gently lift it. Ooh. Come on, let go. There we go. Now it also runs this way, so I think I'm going to start this side by the bok choy, lifting it, and then those little guys. There we go. All right, so there was still a bit of damage, but not the worst. I think the lettuce will survive. It just needs to perk up. I'm going to remove as many of these little weeds as I can see as well. Now I do have a lettuce over here and over here, but honestly, this piece of mesh is not long enough to cover both pieces, and they are quite small. So I'm just going to take this metal one, place it over like this. That should stop any of the kittens trying to lie in this area. It's not going to save anything over here, but what I could do is I'll put the stakes back in this row closer to the plants, and hopefully with a little bit of luck these will just obscure the kittens enough to allow this lettuce to size up slightly. Oh, I'm standing on my radishes here. Next up, we're going to deal with this green container right over here. So as you can see, this container is flourishing, and we didn't actually plant any of these plants in here. They are all volunteers. So what I think has happened is these are seeds that have come up in this container in the soil mix. So the compost may have had some tomato seeds that have survived. Oh, they smell amazing. Right, so my plan is essentially just to take 1 or 2 of these larger tomato starts and move them over into the area where we've just removed the 2 lavenders from. So again, with as little damage as I can possibly muster, I'm going to take 4 of these tomato plants out of this container. First 2. This is not a tomato. Just pull the weeds out while I'm here. I don't mind the tomatoes growing in the container at all. I just think that I could use this to my benefit and plant some of them out in the garden and see if we can get an early start on perhaps growing tomatoes for the season. There's our next 2. I think I may take 2 more. Alright, so I've taken 3 of those tomatoes in the long run and I've planted them here in front of the mesh so that as they get taller, we can use this to string up our main leaders. You could see over here, we've got this like white metal bar that's tacked into the wall. That is where we string our tomatoes from, and we let the string come all the way down so that the tomatoes can be supported a little bit better here in the garden. So that's the plan. Look, they are volunteers, so I'm not sure if they're going to be indeterminates or determinates. I'm also not sure if they're going to be cherries or if they're going to be slices or beefsteaks or whatever. They are just volunteers. I've also taken 2 of these tomato plants, the slightly smaller ones, and placed them right here. This area gets lots of good sun, and I just want to see how the tomatoes do here. Once these vegetables here have run their course, the lettuce and the bok choy as well as the radishes, I will have this area vacant. And I am planning this year to plant some beans here. But if the tomatoes do well, I may actually grow myself some determinate tomatoes in this space. Right, so I've planted out some tomatoes, and now we're going to do just those 3 Swiss chards amongst the carrots. Let's get them planted out. So as you can see, the Swiss chard actually falls into our walkway. So for a while now, I've been thinking I would move it into the gap, and it was only once I came to check on this particular Swiss chard, I realized that I had 2 more here in the garden that I could utilize. I'm going to try and move these without affecting the carrots too much. I do think they are far enough away that that shouldn't be an issue, but you never know. I'm also just going to pinch off the sicklier leaves so it can put its energy into settling and not necessarily trying to save those leaves. I'm actually going to leave that one. It's adjacent enough. I'll just plant these 2 right over here. So I think this is going to be quite nice when they do fill out here. And they are far enough away from the carrots that they shouldn't interfere. The tomatoes look good where they're placed. What I have done is I've come around and I've turned this container so that the tomato plants that were closer to the back wall or closer to the front of this container, I've now turned so that they're against the wall. Hopefully that will encourage them to stand more upright as they grow. We are supposed to have some pretty cold weather here over the next couple of days, so these may not make the frost, but the ones we've planted over here should, because they are actually underneath this shade cloth. So hopefully they'll be shielded enough from the frost that they actually take off. In other gardening news, we still don't know what the mystery brassica is. I come along and I try and check. And Dunks comes along and he tries to check. And so far, we still can't see what we've got growing here. At the moment, we've got some beautiful leaves. So place your bets, guys. What do you think this is? And that brings us to the end of today's video. But before I go, I did actually want to ask you guys one question. Do you perhaps know what's happening with my strawberries? So just for some context, it is winter here. I don't know that they should be fruiting at all, but they are. Now, my problem with them fruiting is they just don't seem to be ripening the whole way. So they're starting to look a little bit ratty even before they're 100% ripe. And I could pick them. And I could just cut the white piece off, but I'm essentially then losing half of my strawberry, and that's not fun. I want nice, juicy, ripe strawberries, not half ones. How can I fix this problem? Please let me know in the comments below. And then again, thanks for hanging out with me today as I did 1 or 2 little things in the garden using the volunteers I've got to fill the gaps that I have and hopefully getting a jump start on the next season.